Welcome to Sleepy Classic Tales. Dracula by Bram Stoker was first published in 1897 and is considered one of the most influential novels in literary history. It shaped the modern image of the vampire and remains a powerful story of fear, control, and the unknown. This is our own calm and gently told short version, clear, understandable, and perfectly suited for falling asleep. Part 1. The Journey to Transylvania. The story begins with Jonathan Harker, a young English solicitor who travels on business to Transylvania, a remote region in Eastern Europe. His destination is the castle of an old nobleman named Count Dracula, who wishes to purchase property in England and has requested Jonathan's assistance. From the very beginning, the journey feels strange. The further Jonathan travels into the mountains, the more isolated the landscape becomes, and the more unsettling the villages appear. When he mentions the name Dracula, the local people react with visible fear. Some cross themselves, others press herbs or small charms into his hands. No one explains anything clearly, they simply look at him with concern. Jonathan dismisses their behavior as superstition. He considers himself educated, rational, and modern, and he smiles at their fear as he continues his journey. When he finally arrives at Dracula's castle, it is already night. The building is ancient, vast, and seemingly abandoned, like a monument from another age. Count Dracula welcomes him personally. He is tall, pale, and extremely polite, moving with a stiff, controlled elegance. His voice is calm, his manners impeccable, almost unnaturally so. Jonathan is treated as a guest, yet something feels deeply wrong. Dracula never eats with him. He appears only at night, and the castle itself feels like a maze without an exit. Jonathan begins to notice unsettling details: windows that cannot be opened, doors that suddenly lock themselves, and a constant feeling of being watched. During the day, Dracula is nowhere to be seen. Jonathan explores the castle, but most rooms are empty, dusty, and eerily silent. There are no servants, no other guests, no voices, only the echo of his own footsteps. One evening, Dracula asks Jonathan to teach him modern English language and etiquette. Jonathan feels flattered, but during their conversation he notices something disturbing. Dracula never appears in any reflection. Not in the window, not in the small mirror Jonathan carries with him. When Jonathan accidentally touches Dracula and feels how unnaturally cold his hand is, a quiet suspicion begins to form. The truth becomes unavoidable when Jonathan encounters three strange women in the castle, pale figures with gentle voices that both attract and terrify him. They approach him slowly, almost tenderly, and just as they are about to touch him, Dracula suddenly appears and violently drives them away. He says only one sentence, a sentence that sends a chill through Jonathan's body. "He belongs to me." In that moment, Jonathan understands the truth. He is not a guest. He is a prisoner. His letters to England are dictated by Dracula. His movements are restricted, and with each passing night he becomes more certain that Dracula is preparing for something. Not just a journey, but something far greater. Jonathan searches for a way to escape. One night he sees Dracula crawling down the castle wall, not like a human being, but like an animal, silent and swift. This confirms his fear. Dracula is not a normal man. After days filled with terror, Jonathan finally discovers an unguarded window. He knows the fall could kill him, but staying in the castle would mean certain death. He chooses to jump and hopes he will survive. Part 2. Mina, Lucy, and the First Signs of Doom. While Jonathan lies injured and unconscious in the mountains after his desperate escape, the story shifts to England. There, two women wait anxiously for news of him. Mina Murray, Jonathan's fiancée, kind, intelligent, and deeply responsible, and Lucy Westenra, Mina's closest friend, cheerful, open, and full of life. Lucy is admired by many, and soon she receives marriage proposals from three men: Dr. John Seward, the head of a psychiatric clinic, Arthur Holmwood, a noble and gentle gentleman, and Quincy Morris, a brave and straightforward American. Lucy is overwhelmed by their affection, but eventually she chooses Arthur Holmwood, forming a sincere and loving engagement. Around this time, Mina learns that Jonathan has disappeared. She senses that something is terribly wrong, yet she forces herself to remain strong and writes to him every day, even though no replies arrive. While Mina worries, Lucy begins to change. At night, she becomes restless, sleepwalking into the garden without remembering how she got there. She grows pale and weak, her strength slowly fading. Dr. Seward, who still loves her, becomes alarmed and calls for help from his former mentor, Professor Abraham Van Helsing, a doctor with extraordinary knowledge and quiet authority. Van Helsing examines Lucy and immediately senses that her condition is unnatural. Her weakness does not resemble any known illness. The changes in her blood, the strange marks on her neck, all form a pattern he recognizes but does not yet name. Van Helsing begins to watch Lucy during the night. Sometimes she seems to improve. At other times, she nearly collapses. Then one night, a terrible mistake is made. Lucy is left alone, only for a few hours. When Van Helsing returns, he finds her at the window, almost unconscious, pale as snow, barely breathing. He realizes that something has visited her again. Looking outside, he sees a shadow, tall, motionless, with glowing red eyes. Van Helsing understands what this means. He stabilizes Lucy as best he can and immediately begins measures that no one else understands. He fills her room with garlic flowers, places them around her neck, and hangs them on doors and windows. Others dismiss this as superstition, but Van Helsing insists. Lucy feels relief. Color returns slightly to her face, her breathing grows calmer. Yet the danger is far from over. During these events, Mina receives news that Jonathan has been found in a convent in Hungary, alive but deeply traumatized, plagued by nightmares and memories he can barely describe. Mina travels to him at once. Their reunion is quiet, filled with relief and pain. Jonathan tells her everything: the castle, the imprisonment, Dracula, and his escape. As Mina renews her promise to Jonathan and they return to England together, Dracula continues his plan. He is already on his way, traveling by ship toward England, with crates filled with soil from his homeland, earth he needs in order to survive. Each night aboard the ship, something dreadful happens. Sailors disappear. Strange sounds echo through the vessel. The captain continues his log, growing more desperate with each entry. When the ship finally reaches England, it lies abandoned at the shore. Only the dead captain remains, bound to the wheel. The cargo consists of 12 crates filled with earth. And Dracula has already vanished, unnoticed, into the streets of England. Part 3. Lucy's transformation and the revelation of the truth. As Dracula moves freely through England, Lucy's condition worsens dramatically. Van Helsing sees what is coming, but he can no longer prevent it. He explains to the others that Lucy must never be left alone. Despite all precautions, another grave mistake occurs. Lucy is left without supervision for a single night. The next morning, she is found nearly lifeless, so weak that even Van Helsing is frightened. Her skin is translucent, her eyes hollow, her breathing barely perceptible. Van Helsing knows he can no longer hide the truth. He explains that Lucy is being hunted by a dark force, a being that feeds on the blood of the living, a creature that exists between day and night, one whose name is rarely spoken anymore. The others think he has lost his reason, but Van Helsing remains serious and finally says the words no one wants to hear. We are facing a vampire. Dr. Seward cannot believe it. Arthur Holmwood refuses to accept it, but Van Helsing is certain. Everything fits. The wounds, the nightly visits, Lucy's fading strength, the slow approach of death. He tries everything to save her: blood transfusions, protective symbols, endless hours of vigilance. But in the end, it is not enough. One morning, Lucy dies peacefully, almost gently. Yet Van Helsing knows she is not truly dead. The others mourn a lost friend. Van Helsing sees a transition. Soon afterward, strange incidents occur in the surrounding area. Children report being called at night by a beautiful woman with a pale face and dark eyes. They speak of the woman with the sharp teeth. Van Helsing knows the truth. He tries to convince the others that Lucy has returned, not as a human being, but as a vampire. Arthur is horrified and refuses to believe that the woman he loved could now prey upon children. But Van Helsing confronts him with a terrible necessity. If they wish to free Lucy, they must do something no one wants to do. One night, Van Helsing, Arthur, and Dr. Seward go to the cemetery. Arthur is tense and heartbroken. Van Helsing is calm, the calm of someone who knows that the next step is painful, but necessary. They open the coffin. Lucy is not inside. Shortly afterward, she appears, beautiful, but no longer human. Her eyes glow, her movements are unnatural. She whispers Arthur's name in a voice that is both familiar and terrifying. In that moment, Arthur understands the truth. The woman before him is no longer the Lucy he loved. Van Helsing urges him to take the final step, not to destroy her, but to release her. With a heavy heart, Arthur performs the act that allows Lucy to finally rest. After that night, the men fully join Van Helsing's fight. They understand that Dracula is real, that Lucy was his victim, that he is in England, and that he will continue to hunt. Part 4. The Hunt Begins, and Mina's Dark Connection. After Lucy's release, there is no turning back. Van Helsing and the others know that Dracula is in England, that he has a plan, and that he will not stop until he achieves his goal. They unite. Jonathan Harker, now recovered, Dr. Seward, Arthur Holmwood, Van Helsing, and Mina, Jonathan's wife. Together, they read Jonathan's diary, and Mina recognizes the parallels between Lucy's suffering and Jonathan's experiences in the castle. Jonathan finally understands that what he lived through in Transylvania was not a nightmare, but the truth. Van Helsing openly describes Dracula as an ancient vampire, strong, intelligent, patient, a being who can dissolve into mist, climb walls, and command shadows, a creature that hides by day and holds immense power at night. The group begins to gather information, following Dracula's traces through London, questioning dock workers, drivers, and merchants. They learn that Dracula has distributed his crates of Transylvanian soil throughout the country because he can only rest where his native earth lies. This discovery will later prove crucial. While the group hunts, Mina begins to feel unwell. She grows weaker, sleeps poorly, and suffers from nightmares that feel disturbingly real. Then comes the moment that changes everything. One night, Jonathan awakens to a scene he will never forget. Mina sits on the bed, Dracula stands before her, and she appears entranced. Dracula forces her to drink his blood while feeding on her in return. It is a cruel, mutual binding, a vampiric connection. When Dracula flees, Mina collapses. She is not yet transformed, but she carries part of Dracula's power within her, a mental bond that could also become an advantage. Van Helsing realizes this immediately. If Dracula has access to Mina's mind, then Mina also has access to Dracula's. She can sense where he is, glimpse fragments of his thoughts, and sometimes even his movements. Mina is horrified, but she understands that this bond may be their only chance to stop him. The men protect her constantly. Van Helsing places protective symbols throughout the house. Jonathan never leaves her side. The true race now begins. Dracula realizes Mina has become dangerous to him, and he flees back to Transylvania. He travels by ship, crosses rivers, and leaves traces that the group follows step by step. Jonathan knows one thing with certainty. This time, he will confront Dracula. He will not flee again. And Mina knows that the longer Dracula lives, the stronger her connection to him becomes. If they do not stop him in time, she may become the next victim. The group gathers weapons, knowledge, and courage, and follows the Prince of Darkness back to the place where everything began. Part 5. The Return to Transylvania and the End of Dracula. The journey back to Transylvania is long and exhausting. The group travels by train across much of Europe, using ships, horse-drawn carriages, and simple wagons, always hoping to reach Dracula before he can fully restore his strength in his castle. Mina grows increasingly pale. Her eyes look tired, and she senses Dracula's presence more strongly than she wishes. It is clear that she is fighting against an invisible but relentless force pulling at her. Van Helsing reassures Jonathan again and again, telling him that the connection is not a death sentence as long as Dracula is stopped in time. Yet even he knows how little time remains. Upon reaching Transylvania, the group splits up to intercept Dracula more quickly. Jonathan and Arthur follow the route along the river. Van Helsing and Mina head toward the castle to place protective symbols and weaken Dracula's refuge. Along the way, Van Helsing and Mina spend the night in a small village. The villagers fear the castle and whisper of shadows moving through the forests at night, and of an evil power that never rests. Van Helsing protects Mina with special care, surrounding her with crosses, garlic, and consecrated hosts. Mina feels the bond with Dracula pulsing, as if he senses her nearing his old home. The next day, they reach the castle. Van Helsing leads Mina into an ancient room, drawing protective circles on the floor and praying quietly. Mina closes her eyes, and for the first time in a long while, the connection to Dracula grows weaker, like a thread about to break. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Arthur pursue the wagon carrying Dracula's crate. The driver urges his horses forward, knowing the cargo is valuable and that those following him mean harm. The sun sinks low, and time is running out. If Dracula reaches nightfall, he will regain his full strength. Jonathan leaps from his horse and runs toward the wagon as Arthur fends off the pursuers. The wind is icy, the ground uneven, but Jonathan presses on. He reaches the wagon just as Arthur overcomes the last attackers. Together they tear open the crate, and there lies Dracula, pale, motionless, yet still dangerous. Jonathan does not hesitate. He knows this moment will define his entire life. With a single, decisive strike, he drives the blade straight into Dracula's heart. A scream, unlike any human voice, fills the air, a sound of pain, rage, and ancient power. Then it is over. Dracula's body crumbles into fine, gray dust, as if he had never existed. At that same moment, far away in the castle, Mina opens her eyes. The bond breaks. Warmth flows through her, and Van Helsing knows instantly that she is saved. When the others return to her, they see her relief. Jonathan holds her tightly, and for the first time in weeks, she can breathe freely again. The group leaves Transylvania soon after, exhausted, marked, but alive. And so ends the story of Jonathan Harker's struggle, of Lucy's fate, of Mina's courage, and of one of literature's darkest shadows. For a moment, there is only silence, a silence that feels like a new beginning after so many dark nights. That was our calm, short version of Dracula by Bram Stoker. While listening, you might have wondered why Lucy seems to fall ill even before Dracula arrives in England, how Dracula's pursuers manage to catch him despite his apparent head start, or what Dracula reveals about the fears and upheavals of the time in which it was written, and why those themes still resonate today. We explore these and many other questions in our companion book, Golden Pages, Volume 1. The link can be found in the description. Good night, and if you like, we'll listen to each other again tomorrow.